I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Emily, and I am the Senior Communications and Engagement Officer at Big Society Capital. And my role involves me speaking to and engaging with a range of charities and social enterprises all across the UK and running events like this one today. I joined the team at Big Society Capital almost exactly 2 months ago now, so I'm fairly new, and I've actually come from the charity sector myself. I've actually worked up in Scotland now for 6 years in a range of different third sector roles. And one of the key parts of our team at Big Society Capital, the social sector engagement team, is to act as a translator. And what that means is we break down a lot of the complex jargon and the language around social investment, and we ensure that it's really meaningful and relevant to organisations just like yourself across Yorkshire and Humber. And Let's Talk Good Finance is our informal event format, and it really aims to bring together charities, social enterprises and community businesses who would like to learn more about social investment. And we are really keen to bring learning to you in the form of discussion and the form of listening. And the way that we do that is to bring you our brilliant Hear From a Peer speakers. And also today, you'll get the opportunity to hear a little bit more about social investment in practice. And we really are keen that this event remains quite informal, or as informal as possible, even in this slightly strange virtual world. I know many of us are just really looking forward to getting back into catching up in real life, but for now we're really trying to make this as relaxed and informal as possible. So please remember that there's no such thing as a silly question. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to ask them. You can ask a question by either just taking off your mic and asking a question, or you can pop it into the chat box. You can also send a message directly to myself or to Ashita or to Ali if you'd rather just ask us a question directly as well. And a really important point to mention is around jargon. So there is a lot of jargon in the social investment world. As someone who is very new to this world, I am very much getting used to asking people to explain what different acronyms mean, and I'm constantly asking what different terms mean, from things like crazy equity to crowdfunding. So if you want any more information, and like me, you're really interested to learn, but you just want to break down some of those barriers and that jargon, please feel free to ask and to check us if we are using terms that you don't understand. So I want to take you through the agenda for today just really quickly. I'll share my screen again and I'll just get the agenda up just to quickly take you through that. So we have got, first of all, welcome and introductions, and I'll hand over to Ali in just 1 second so she can say hi to you all. We are then going to hear from my wonderful colleague Ashita, and she is going to take us through a little bit about the kind of world of social investment from a good finance perspective. And then we're going to hear from our two fantastic Hear From a Peer speakers, Louise and Lewis, who will be speaking to you all about their warts and all journey of social investment. And we'll be splitting you into 2 breakout rooms to do this. We're really keen to have that kind of interactive opportunity for conversation. So we'll be splitting you into 2 different breakout rooms, and you can hear from our speakers today. We will be recording both of the sessions, so don't worry if you wanted to hear both of them. You can catch up with those afterwards as well. We'll then take a quick comfort break. That's very important. Get a cup of tea, refuel, come back. And then we'll hear from Hermina from Social and Sustainable Capital. And then finally, we have a little bit of time for some optional virtual networking from 4 o'clock if any of you would like to just stick around, have a cup of tea, like the good old days where we could all catch up. It was probably wine when we were all catching up in real life, but we can all stick around and have, just a good catch up after that. So we're going to start off this session this afternoon by a welcome from Ali at Social Enterprise Yorkshire and Humber. Thanks, Ali.
You're welcome. So hello everyone, I'm Ali from Social Enterprise Yorkshire and Humber. I know quite a few of you. Good to see you. Good to see those that I haven't met before. Hopefully you'll come back to another event afterwards. this is the first time we've run one online. We've done quite a few of these. We usually run 2 a year in conjunction with Good Finance. So we'll see how it goes. And one thing we thought with trial that's very different, because we know some people when they're first dipping the toe in social investment are just interested in the smaller pots, and other people are really wanting the bigger funds. So that's why we've done the under 75k and over 75k. Now, me, in my wisdom, when I was setting up the Eventbrite, I put the questions in and didn't realise you could tick both. So some of you have ticked both, but you've just automatically been split down. So if you end up in one and you thought, oh, that's why. If you just ticked under 75k, you're in that one. If you tick both, you could be in one of each. But as Emily said, they are all being recorded, so there's no worry there. You'll be able to catch up. But we just thought this was something different and a bit more interesting to trial, and the groups will be smaller as well, because online it's a bit harder, isn't it, to try and get a question in, or it seems a bit weirder. I'll apologise in advance if you see a black tail walk past. My cat is around somewhere and she likes jumping up on the table and walking past at the most opportune moments. So for those that don't know, Social Enterprise Yorkshire and Humber, we're a membership-led organisation. We're like Ron Seal, we do what it says on the tin. We support social enterprises across Yorkshire and Humber. You can go to our website or email me to find out more later. We've got quite a few members and partners on here, so it's good to see. And I'm hoping that Mitch down the bottom, we might see Mitch's cat at some point, because the photograph there is of a cat. So if you do have animals, feel free to have them come along and learn more about social investment. And I will now stop rabbiting and pass back over to Emily.
Fantastic, thanks, Ellie. I know it's always good to see people's pets and what have you in this weird world as well. I was getting introduced to Ali's lovely cat the other day, which is always very, very nice. So what we're going to do now is just do a quick Mentimeter poll. I'm not sure if any of you have used Mentimeter before. It is something that is being used more and more in this virtual world, but we are just really keen to hear a little bit about why you decided to come along to this session today, and we thought we'd give you the opportunity to get a bit interactive. So I'm going to share my screen again, and the key thing with Menti, if you haven't used it before, you can just type in menti.com and you can type in the code that is 6841716. And you can get to Menti that way. I think I could share the link as well to Menti so that we can pop that in the chat. But if you just type in menti.com and then type in the code 6841716, which should be up on the screen now, you'll be able to get to Menti as well. Just grab the link too. And then really what we would like you to do is just type in why you decided to attend today's session, and just let us know kind of what you are hoping to get out of the session today. I'll get the link and pop it in the chat so it's easy for everyone. There we go. Is everyone managing to get to Menti okay? Yeah. Great. Sometimes it can be easier just to pop it into your phone as well, or just to pop onto a different tab and get to it that way. Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. I'll let everyone hopefully get onto the platform and to pop in why they decided to come along today. Yeah, brilliant. Looking for inspiration and guidance, I like that. We can hopefully give you a lot of inspiration and definitely lots of guidance on this session today. Yeah, working for charities and have recently taken up new roles and coming on to find out more. That's brilliant. Interested in finding out more about finance and your social enterprise, fantastic. And then sharing experiences from others, absolutely. I know from listening back to you and from hearing from my team within Big Society Capital that the Hear from a Peer speaker spots are always really, really well received. And it's just great to hear from other organisations about their experience and to get the kind of the nitty gritty, the warts and all journey. So yeah, great to hear from peers as well. Brilliant. Increasing awareness of the funding options, absolutely. Interest in social investment and for expansion, sure, that sounds brilliant. And I think you'll hear from both of our speakers a little bit about that today, and also from Hermina as well. Brilliant. There's loads of great stuff here. And what we can actually do as well is after the event today, we can we'll export this and we can share that as well. It's just really good to kind of to reflect exactly on why we've decided to come here today, and to hear a little bit more about each other and what our kind of expectations for this session are. Loads more stuff coming in, which is great. Brilliant. Okay, just before I hand over to Ishita, I'm gonna actually run one more Mentimeter. I hope that's okay. We are looking for a bit of a sense check from you around how you would rate your knowledge of social investment. Whereas one is limited knowledge or no knowledge at all, which is absolutely fine. And lots of people who join these sessions, absolutely, and that's why they come here, is to learn. And then 10 would be lots and lots and lots of knowledge, a real expert or very, very informed around the area. So if you could just let us know where on the scale you would put yourself, and please just be honest. It's not identifiable, it comes up as a cumulative for the whole group. So if you could just pop on your knowledge there, that would be fantastic. It's just really good for us to get a kind of starting point. Again, a reflection on why we're here and where on our kind of social investment journey we all are. Oh, a strong 5. I like that. Right in the middle. Good. I'll let a couple more people just pop in their knowledge, and then I will pass over to my wonderful colleague Ishita in just a couple of seconds. We're going to just remain at 5. If we had 5.5, that would have been pretty good for my my brain, how I work. But no, 5.6, I can cope with that. That's good. Fantastic. Okay, well that looks good to me, and I think yeah, having a good solid benchmark as to where we are and what we are going to learn from this session is really good. So thank you for filling that in. We do have one more Mentimeter, but it's not going to come till the very end of the session. So thank you for participating in that. Okay, so without further ado, I am going to pass over to Ishita, Good Finance Project Manager, and she is going to chat you through what is social investment.
Hello, thank you for having me. And I'm going to start by saying that even though I'm drinking from a wine glass, I promise it's not wine. Everything's in the dishwasher, so needs must. But I thought I'd start by saying that. So thank you for having me. I'm going to do a quick overview into sort of the history and the context of social investment. But what I will say is that definitely, probably when you're going to understand it really and how it comes to life is from a peer speakers and just hearing stories about it in context. So if there's any questions or anything as we're going along, please do pop them in the chat, and I'll be around for the rest of this afternoon as well, just to answer any questions or anything you have. And I'll start by saying is we'll put our hands up and say that social investment is not the most interesting topic in the world, and it is actually really difficult to bring it to life, and we're going to try our best to do that today. So yeah, bear with us. Right, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, perfect. Can everyone see my screen? Just give me a nod if you can. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So let's start with a sort of introduction to social investment and the history and the context, and some of the sort of story behind what it is and how we got to where we are now. So if we go all the way back to 2008, I'm sure most of you will remember that there was a global financial crisis, and not too long after that there was another crisis in 2011. And the impact of this crisis on the sector was incredibly profound, and donations from individuals across the board fell, as did philanthropic giving, and various other types of giving. Public sector outsourced contracts were also cut or cancelled, and the culmination of all of those things is that charities were deprived of vital revenue. In the thick of the recession, social enterprises, charities, and the community sector were hard hit by funding cuts and decreased grants. And that was just a reality of what happened after the financial crisis, is that even though charities and social enterprises were delivering really vital work and really tackling some of the most pressing needs across the UK, the availability of grant funding was declining, and we really saw that after the last recession. But what did that really mean for charities and social enterprises? You know, it meant that they really had to consider their resilience and their sustainability, their income generation, and their revenue models, as well as the finance and the funding that's required to support their organisation. So, you know, in the thick of the recession, thousands of charities were sort of forced to close, and it was a really difficult time, and it really did push the sector to think more about resilience and sustainability and you know, finance and funding. And one of the things that sort of happened at that time that was quite pivotal to the creation of social investment, the social investment market in the UK, was the creation of big society capital back in 2012, and the utilisation of dormant bank accounts. So essentially the money that was left over and held in dormant bank accounts in the UK, along with investment from 4 sort of main UK banks, was used to create big society capital. And big society capital exists to improve the lives of people in the UK through investment with a sustainable return. And essentially that's sort of a fancy way of saying it exists to improve lives by investing money that provides both social and financial return. So I'm sure you can ask Emily more about Big Society Capital, and she will tell you more about it later. But essentially, Big Society Capital work with various expert partners and collaborate in order to be able to invest money into the front line. They don't do that directly. They work with sort of a network of partners and social investors in order to be able to invest into charities and social enterprises to create that impact. I just want to sort of highlight a couple of bits of research that sort of indicate some of the, you know, the context of where social investment sits. So this is a bit of research that NPC did, I think 3 years ago, where they surveyed their members, and 31% of their members identified more funding as the most important tool to help the sector increase its impact in society. 26% of charities in their network had already set up a trading subsidiary and were moving towards more commercial models, and over a third of charities had already explored social investment. the most recent Social Enterprise UK survey, Capitalism is in Crisis, really shone a light on how social enterprises were feeling about social investment at the moment. 43% said that access to finance was their biggest obstacle to sustainability. But on the flip side, 48% had made a profit in the last year, 52% has increased their revenue, and over sort of 75% of social enterprises actually earned more of 75% of their income from trading, which was really interesting. When it came down to grant funding, sort of one of the biggest barriers, if you see 25%, still identified obtaining grant funding as one of their biggest barriers to growth. And so, we've got some research to sort of back up some of what we already know, that charities and social enterprises are becoming increasingly resilient, increasingly commercial, and that access to finance and funding still remains a challenge, whether that's grant funding or debt or equity finance. It can still be a bit of a challenge. So what does that mean? So what does that really mean, and what does social investment mean in this context? Charities and social enterprises in the UK, they're dealing with some of the most challenging issues, and we speak to and hear from all people all the time who are doing just the most incredible work, whether that's in employment and training, housing, education, financial inclusion. They are doing some incredible work. Social investment, in its essence, is the use of repayable finance to help an organization achieve its social purpose. Now, the key thing to know about social investment is that it is repayable finance. And where we see it work really well is when an organization has a clear idea of how they would repay that finance, and has a clear purpose for taking on that finance. And you'll see that come to life from sort of talking to people and listening to our case studies and things, but that is where we see social investment work very well, whether it's sort of buying an asset or launching a new piece of work, growing or kickstarting something, where there's a clear purpose and a clear income stream to be able to pay it back. That's where social investment works really well. And what that does mean, and what we always say, is that social investment is not for everyone. It is simply one tool that is in your financial toolkit. It sits alongside grants, contracts, donations, everything else, and it is just one of the tools for you to explore. There are sort of clear circumstances and situations in which social investment can work, but it's definitely not a one size fits all, and it's definitely not the answer in every situation that you're going to be in. And that's what's really important to remember. It's just one tool in the toolkit. So where it works is when charities and social enterprises have a clear idea of where they're generating surplus from, whether that's trading, contracts, or a combination of all of these. And then they use that profit or surplus to repay investors. And it sits alongside the other tools in the financial toolkit. So I'm just going to play a very quick video that kind of summarizes what I've said far more eloquently. And I'm hoping you're all going to be able to hear this okay.
Charities and social enterprises like yours are tackling some of society's biggest problems. Maybe you've set up a coffee business to give people the skills to get back into work, or are running a nursery and using the profits to support local parents. Whatever your mission, you'll need money to help with cash flow, to grow your organisation, or to buy an asset like a new building. You might even need finance to kick-start your new venture, and that money could come from traditional grants or donations, or as a loan from your local bank. One option is to get that money from a social investor. That social investor could be an organisation or an individual, and you can borrow their money or offer them shares in your organisation. But what makes a social investor different? Well, they don't just want to see a return on their investment. They want to see their money being used for good, helping you to keep delivering your social mission. Sound good? To see if it's right for you, check out goodfinance.org.uk.
So one of the messages in that video towards the end was, social investors aren't interested in just financial return, they're also interested in social impact. And that is what makes them different from a mainstream lender. And one of the things that we did at Good Finance last year actually was we looked at all of the social investors listed in our directory, and out of there's almost 90 listed in there, and out of those 90, 85% of them were actually registered social enterprises or charities themselves, which I think is a really sort of good way of understanding why social investors are different from commercial lenders, is that social impact, it really is core to what they do. A social investor isn't going to lend to you if they don't think that you're capable of paying it back, and that repayable element is incredibly important. But they are also going to work very hard to understand your social impact. So the last thing that I wanted to do before I sort of wrap up and hand back over to Emily is just a very, very quick demo of the Good Finance website. So if you haven't spent any time on the Good Finance website before, you will find a lot of resources on here that will hopefully help. Starting with, we have a very quick diagnostic tool called Is It Right For Us? It'll take 2 to 3 minutes, and it asks you a couple of questions to help you understand whether social investment could be right for your organization. So it will just ask you things like, do you know what you need the money for? Do you know how you would potentially repay it, etc. And it will tell you both whether social investment could be right for you, and if so, what kind of social investment. And then what you can do is that you can hop over to this section, our investor directory, and you can search which social investors might be right for you. So you can sort of put in your location, the amount you're looking for, what type, and what sort of area you work in, and it will pull up the social investors that are most relevant for you to think about. And it has all of their contact details in there as well, so you can get in touch. There's lots of other resources on here, so lots on here about understanding what it is, the different types. If you want to measure social impact, we've got a couple of tools on here as well. And one of my personal favorite bits of the website is our stories section. So we've got lots and lots of case studies on here if you want to understand how it sort of works in context. I should also say that a couple of months ago, back in April, we launched a coronavirus resource hub, which we've just sort of been populating with information that's especially helpful at the moment. But yeah, definitely spend a little bit of time on the Good Finance website if you haven't already done so. And I think that is pretty much everything from me. Did anybody have any questions?
I am delighted to welcome Louise Hale, CEO of Ilkley Community Enterprise, and she's going to chat to us a little bit more about Outside the Box and take us through her journey of social investment, but also, just as Ali said, her kind of warts and all journey. And we're really delighted to have Louise with us today. One thing I'll say just before I hand over to Louise is please feel free to pop any questions that you have in the chat if things come up that you think about, and we can ask Louise at the end, or we can also use the space that we have at the end once Louise has done her presentation, just to have a really informal discussion and chat as well. So whichever works best for you. I'm going to share Louise's presentation and let's get going.
Thank you very much, Emily. Hello to everybody. Thanks for inviting me to input today. Delighted to be able to share our experience of the social investment journey and the kind of journey that we've been on more generally as an organisation. I have been instructed to condense my slides and try and keep to time, which is quite a tough challenge when you've got, what we consider to be quite a rich story to tell, but hopefully I'll cover off all the basics. And as Emily said, we'll get a chance to perhaps have a bit of a discussion and a proper Q&A at the end. So yeah, happy to answer any queries or take any comments at all that you've got. So I'm Louise Hale. I'm part-time Chief Executive of the charity Ilkley Community Enterprise. I was one of the founding members of the organisation, but then about 3 years ago, I was asked by the board to step down from the board and take on a part-time CEO role, just reflecting the amount of development work that we had as a charity. So who are we and what do we do? So Ilkley Community Enterprise we're a registered charity. We're a limited company. We work as a social enterprise. We are very, very community rooted and community focused. We were set up, well, we set the company up, and then very quickly charitable registration followed in 2012. There was a group of about half a dozen of us who ran a campaign locally to try and keep the only provision that was available at that time for adults with learning disabilities going in the area. And we failed in our campaign to keep that going, but undeterred, we decided to do something about it. So we spent a lot of evenings over much wine trying to develop a new, what we considered a kind of new approach to supporting people with learning disabilities in the local community, and that kind of outside the box emerged from that process. We involved a huge number of people in the effort to try and set up outside the box, and eventually that happened, and I'll talk about what outside the box is in a minute. The kind of core mission of ICE as a charity is social inclusion, with a primary focus on people with learning disabilities, but that's not exclusive. So we support people with physical disabilities, associated health conditions, plus also we diversified a couple of years ago into home care for elderly people and disabled people. So the kind of unifying objective really of the charity is social inclusion, with a particular focus on learning disability, but we kind of haven't let that restrict our kind of reach and impact. I was asked to kind of just talk very briefly about our board and our governance. So currently we have a board of 5 trustee directors. We meet monthly as a board, which I think is quite unusual in the charity sector. The board members bring lots of expertise with particular specialisms in finance, which is very helpful. The charity sector, we've got an HR specialist, so the HR director for Porter Cabin UK and internationally sits on our board. We are a small charity, I have to say, so attracting the kind of people that we've got on our board we're very proud of that, because you know they enable us to kind of punch above our weight in terms of the size and scale of our organisation. We've also got, we have a strong community volunteer base in the organisation, and so we have volunteers represented on the board. I've already talked about my own role. We have a management team, a staff team now across the charity as a whole of about 70. And as I've already said, we have a team of volunteers, really diverse, from local school pupils through to retired older people, through to university, college students, and refugee asylum seeker. People from Bradford come in, do volunteering with us, and that's about at the kind of 50 to 60 level in terms of volume, consistently. So, outside the box, this is where we were at in early 2013. So we set up as an organisation in late 2012 with a vision of creating a community cafe that supported young people and adults with learning disabilities, with a particular focus on trying to improve their employability and, where possible, progress them into paid work, and also strengthen their profile and involvement in the local community. And we wanted to use a cafe that was almost owned by the community and supported by the community to provide a kind of real work environment for, we call our clients members, for our members, and also to kind of make it a little bit easier to provide a platform for us to support their greater involvement in the local community. We had absolutely no track record as an organisation because we'd only set up in 2012. We had no accounts, we had very little money. We ran a community-based fundraising campaign with lots of people doing lots of fundraising activities for us, and we applied for some very small pots of grant funding, and we managed to get around the 140,000 mark to secure premises. As you can see from this picture, absolutely gut them and remodel those premises as our outside the box community cafe. And this is what it was like when we launched in June 2013. We begged, borrowed, and didn't exactly steal, but did lots of eBay purchases of our furniture. So we had a really eclectic mix, I might say, of in terms of the kitting out of the cafe. But that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to be different, bright, innovative, a bit quirky, and relaxed. A relaxed space both for our customers and for our members. The turquoise sofa units came from the London Olympic Village Legacy Programme. So we were really, really resourceful in terms of where we sourced the kit and equipment to be able to get up and running. We launched with Ilkley's first big lunch, which I think some people may know about. That's the kind of one day of the year where, pre-COVID, of course, you got all your kind of neighbours together and just used food and the kind of cooking and sharing of food to bring people together. And that was our launch event in 2013. So what do we do and what's happened since then? Well, we've run as an inclusive community cafe since then. We have engaged and supported young people and adults with learning disabilities. That's our mission, is to enable them to have more fulfilled, independent and healthier lives. We have a focus on building their confidence, improving their skills, making them as employable as possible, in terms of, particularly with reference to the kinds of jobs that they want, rather than the kinds of roles that maybe have been assumed as being appropriate for them. And as I said earlier, improving their kind of general connectivity and involvement in a real work environment. We're not into delivering activities. We are focused on progressing people. So we purposely have steered from the outset away from the idea of being anything like the usual kind of daycare provision that traditionally has been offered to people with learning disabilities. We wanted a non-traditional, more innovative, more creative approach. And as I said earlier, our clients, the people we engage and support, are called members. And the reason for that is because we don't see them as kind of recipients of our services. They are a key part of the overall outside the box team. And for anybody who visits the cafe when we're fully back open, you'll see that in action. They are serving people, taking orders, cooking food, serving food, etc. That's just an idea of, we've got 4 of our members there. We had a kind of a bake-off event a couple of years back, and there's some of the participants celebrating after eating lots of cake. So our kind of overall model, when we launched, we had no staff. We launched purely using volunteers, and I was one of them. We used to open max 2 days a week. We then pushed the boat out like mad and went 3 days a week. We'd actually we were untrained in terms of catering generally. We'd make basically cakes and scones and bits of sandwiches. We all had a bit of barista training, and that's how we started. And we had at that point a maximum of 10 members who were involved on a very, very part-time basis. By January this year, we were open 7 days a week. We had 60 members each week who we were supporting. We had, as I say, a large team of volunteers, and we had a staff team of 23 full-time equivalents. And our staff team broadly breaks down into cafe and catering staff. So we now have people who know what they're doing, making up our food and drinks rather than us all those years ago. And we have a team who are there to support our members. We've won national recognition for our work. So we've been featured in The Guardian and on the BBC. We've won a number of local awards. So for example, we won the Hospitality Business of the Year in Ilkley. We won the People's Choice, which was a public vote award in terms of best business. We continue to be very, very rooted in our community. So lots of community groups meet in our premises. We're open daytime only, And so lots of community groups use our premises for meetings, for events. We take part, and our members are supported to take part in lots and lots of community events and activities, everything from Ilkley Literature Festival through to the local carnival. So yeah, very busy, very active, kind of thriving community cafe that really delivers that sort of progression and greater participation in the labour market and the local community for people who need the extra support to do so. So the numbers, the finance, our model of income is that we obviously receive trading income. So the cafe has to work as a commercial operation. It has to wash its face financially. We haven't got a cafe, we can't deliver the support that we need to our members. I don't know whether any of you know, I know one or two of you I know are familiar with Ilkley, but Ilkley has a huge number of cafes. And that's everything from small independents through to the big corporates. So we're in a hugely competitive marketplace locally. So we've had to work and have to continue to work hard to keep that trading income where we need it to be. And that's involved us thinking about who our kind of core market is. In terms of our customer base, and tends to be families. As you can see from the kind of picture of our interior, it's the kind of place where parents and grandparents and family groups love to just come because they can kind of let the kids run around, and we've got a kids play, really nice little kids play area. It's a relaxed atmosphere. We also, sorry, can I just go back a little? Thanks, Emily. So trading income is critical. Member fee income, so we charge our members to come and get support from us. It's not a free service, and they are not paid to do so. They pay us because we provide the support that we think they need and they need in order to be able to progress. We're really proactive in terms of trying to secure whatever grant money is out there that will help us achieve our mission. And as we had all of that kind of financial support to help us get set up, that has nowhere near at that original level, but it has continued to come into us. So last year, our year ends December. In 2019, from outside the box, we were turning over £500,000. We've used the success that we've had with the cafe to, as a charity, kind of diversify and grow our overall business. So we've introduced an alternative offer to the cafe for members, which is called a Choices programme, and that does everything from creative workshops in arts and crafts and drama and music, photography, through to health and well-being support. We have a specific programme called OTB Works, which is about trying to deliver intensive support for members who are work ready, and also to engage employers locally in offering employment for people with learning disabilities. And so we've worked and continue to work with Marks and Spencer's locally, Booths Supermarket, Specsavers, and we've also, as I mentioned, become involved in the delivery of home care and supported independent living services. All of that has helped us as a charity to get into a position where we can start to think about social investment. So I'm conscious I'm basically running over time, so I'll try and speed up. Social investment. Because of the kind of demand and growth that we have had with the cafe, we had for the last probably 4 years been trying to find better premises. So we've basically outgrown those original premises. And in kind of mid 2018, we had a couple of options that we were seriously considering in terms of new premises. We knew that we would not be able to, from our own resources, find the money to be able to make the purchase of either of those options. So we started to explore social lenders, and I'm conscious that we have Jeremy Ince from the Charity Bank on the call, and we made contact with the Charity Bank with Jeremy. We looked at other potential investment sources, and we obviously were looking very closely at trying to build our reserves to a point where we weren't overly exposed in terms of the lending that we did. Late in 2018, we purchased a building in Ilkley called the Victorian Arcade, which is a large kind of flagship town centre building. And we did that in order to provide a long-term home for Outside the Box to enable it to continue to grow and develop. We were able to do that with the support of the Charity Bank, who very kindly provided us with a loan finance of 266,000. The loan is over a 20-year period, circa 4.25% interest per annum. To get to the position where we'd purchased the property and we'd done everything that we needed in order to get that loan agreement in place, we did benefit from gifted and discounted professional support. We found that even with the expertise that we had on the board in terms of finance and business, we needed some legal input into that process. And so we were lucky in being able to not have to pay full fees. But it was absolutely essential that we had that legal advice throughout that whole process. We also continued to be very proactive in terms of trying to secure grant finance, and have recently been, well, earlier this year, been successful in securing quite a large grant from the Wolfson Foundation, and smaller one from the Bailey Thomas. That's all capital grant funding, which will help us do what we need to do in terms of remodeling and refurbishing those premises. So I am on the home straight here. Our experience and learning, just a few headlines here from me. We set out to be innovative and to continue to be innovative, but realised pretty soon that innovation involves risk. You have to take risk. You have to be prepared to take the risk in order to be able to move things on and do things differently. The board has embraced that. They want to grow the charity, they want to innovate, and they want to do more. But it's really important that all the board are behind that and prepared to support it. A kind of ongoing process and almost continual process of just continuing to test your kind of basic assumptions, particularly in terms of future income streams in order to be able to repay loan finance. And staff engagement, I think, is really important, so that the whole staff team understand what it is you're trying to do, why you're doing it, that it's not growth for growth's sake, it's not innovation for innovation's sake. This is about being able to deliver, for us, improved lives for the people that we serve, young people and adults with learning disabilities. There's a real rigor to this process. I think Jeremy will attest to that. So there's a lot of paper, there's a lot of administration, there's a lot of detail that you need to be on top of. And that's in relation to your finances, your evidence performance, your management capability. So be prepared for the kind of admin and paperwork involved. In terms of our kind of experience of working with the charity bank, I would say this, wouldn't I? But it has been really, really positive. They've been very supportive to us from the outset. And more recently, under COVID-19 conditions, have been really flexible and continue to be very supportive of us as an organisation. Although, you know, I think it's worth saying that they are a lender, and like other lenders, they have to have a commercial perspective. So there's an expectation, and I hope we kind of, you know, meet that generally, that you are businesslike in your dealings with a lender. Just because we operate in the voluntary community sector does not mean that we can't be professional and commercial and businesslike. And I think that's really key in terms of the approach and relationship building with any social lender. The benefits to us of getting into social investment field, I think, has been really significant. So it's given us as a charity, and the people we work with and the people who work for us, and the kind of local community that we work with, a kind of renewed vision achievement, a new energy, a new commitment to what we're about. It's kind of boosted our general kind of levels of confidence in our own capability, certainly improved our capacity to draw in other funding. Key lesson is you've got to resource the process. It will take time, it will take effort, so before you set out, it's worth looking at what resource internally you need to commit to it, and hold your nerve. It is risky, so it can get a bit hairy, and we are dealing with loan agreements that span decades, and so it's very difficult to do kind of forecasting and predicting over that time scale. But I think it's about having the confidence to take the leap and make the risk. Final one from me. We now have flagship premises. We have a permanent home. That will help with our growth, as in terms of both customers and members. It will help us generate new jobs. It will help us develop new services, expand our volunteer base, improve our community links, and ultimately all of that helps with our income. And it will massively improve our ability to positively change lives, i.e. achieve the impact that we want to with our members. couple of quotes there from our members. Outside the box helped me to get a proper job. There should be more places like it. And the last two are from our customers. So
Thank you.
if that wasn't too much of a kind of gallop through, I apologise. It's taken me a bit longer than I was allotted. And as I say, really more than happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Louise. That was fantastic. And you did take us on an absolute journey there. It's been really, really interesting for me to listen to. I am just mindful of the time, and I think we should be okay to ask a couple of questions, but we've obviously got a break coming up. So has anybody got a question that they would like to ask Amanda? I can see, yeah, that'd be fantastic.
I found that really interesting, Louise, and I just wanted to ask what's happened this year, and were the charity, how flexible and understanding have Charity Bank been about, you know, I'm assuming you've struggled to pay your loan back, you might not have done, but how flexible have Charity Bank been about that?
Yeah, well, along with everybody else, you know, we started this year on such a high, and we're just about to contract with builders on a large value contract to rip out the Victorian arcade and remodel and refurbish, etc., etc. We closed the cafe and we closed all member services by the end of March. We furloughed staff, you know, but we have recently just started to reopen things. We did the digital stuff, but we've started to reopen. The Charity Bank have been completely supportive of us. I've really understood the challenges that all of that presented to us. I've been dead keen to kind of stay in touch and do what they can, including you know, adapting our loan agreement with them to reflect the fact that we haven't got the level of income that was forecast.
Okay, so did they give you a payment holiday or something like that?
They gave us a break, yeah.
Good, right, okay, thank you.
So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question from Louise now, or anything else to discuss? No? Okay, well, that's absolutely fine. Thank you so much, Louise, for your time. That's been brilliant, and really, really great to hear your journey. I'm sure everyone's learned a huge amount from you there. And like we said before, we are recording the sessions, so hopefully those who were in the other session, I know people are really keen to come along to this one as well, will be able to catch up. So thank you so much for your time today. That's really, really
anybody who hasn't been to the cafe, once we're back up in it, we are opening weekends from next weekend, so anyone who would like a coffee and a cake and a chat, very welcome.
Sounds very good to me. I'm always up for coffee and cake, Louise.
As I say, what I'm going to try and do is I'm trying to cover the more of the boring stuff to start with, and then I'm going to try and make a few key points I think that need to be always beared in mind for social finance. So I'm Lewis Spate. I'm director of Omnis Circumvado CIC. Omnis Circumvado CIC. Sorry, Omnis Circumvado is Latin for all encompassing. So if you want to just go to the next slide, Ellie. So what Omnis basically does is we are a specialist sports coaching company, and we work with SEND schools, we work with community groups, and we work with adult day centres as well. And we're funded through a mix of commercial and grant income. What is different about what Omnis does compared to a lot of other companies is we work with, well, every early years right through to elderly, but they're the people with the most complex needs. And that includes people with complex mental health conditions such as schizophrenia, to children and young people with life-limiting conditions, and also autism. So we work in a variety of settings, and we also deliver. This is particularly more to the schools than to the other groups, but we do deliver we do deliver training as well. So part of what we offer is continuous professional development for school staff who are looking to, you know, develop the staff. What we offer is it's a mixture between traditional sport and rehabilitation, depending on the client group that we're working with. As I say, what it's really important to bear in mind is we work with the most people with the most complex needs. So these are children, young people and adults who would otherwise miss out on the benefits of physical activity and physical exercise, even if they have an interest. But that's obviously me. A bit about my background. I'm an ex Great Britain wheelchair racer. I was a European record holder for the 1 to 800 meters. I've been involved in sport since the age of 15, and I've got a degree in sports science from Leeds Beckett University, specialising in rehabilitation. The guy in the middle is Richard Shostak. Richard and I are the main two, if you like. We do the majority of the delivery. We also work with a few part-timers, and the third person on the board is called Graham Presswich. Graham, funnily enough, myself and Graham worked at another social enterprise together because I worked extensively in health before becoming more involved in sport. Me and Graham worked together there. We also worked together on a board for a charity based in Leeds called Change People, and they're a charity based in Leeds who produce accessible information for people with learning difficulties. So me and Graham worked together for quite a long time. So when we were looking for a third board member, Graham was the first person that I thought of because, well, he's on loads of boards. You just have to make sure you just have to read his extensive conflicts of interest before, you know, you appoint him, because there might be something in there. Myself and Richard, what we did was we worked at another company before setting up this one, but we weren't happy with how they were doing business because they were taking all the money out of the community and not leaving any benefit in. And that sounds like hindsight, you know, it sounds lofty to say that, but we were happy about the work we were doing. We were happy about the benefit, the impact we were having, particularly working in a few pilot programs with a few SEND schools. And the company we were working for just didn't share that enthusiasm. So we decided to go it alone. And my first thing when Richard mentioned it to me was, have you told the wife? Because I obviously, I didn't have a family to support, but he decided he wanted to take the leap. So we've been going now we incorporated in June 2018. We got going properly in September 2018, and we have survived the pandemic, which I'm not quite sure how that's happened, to be fair. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Right, so a bit about the social finance that we got, just to break it down. We approached Key Fund in, I can't specifically remember, I think it was, we're looking at about May 2019, possibly. It might be slightly earlier, it might be slightly later than that. But our biggest problem was the spreadsheets look good, but that didn't necessarily translate to the cash on hand. And I think that's a big, it's a big problem, that particularly for smaller organizations, because I mean, leading up to that point, we had a run of what I described as bad luck, but then Richard frowned at me. We had one major client fall down and break her arm before she could sign the check, because people still want to pay you in checks. I don't get it. It's just, what can you do? Then we had the chair of one group who we were working with die, and he had no succession planning, so that held up that. And then we had the entire leadership team of the school either get made redundant or get made redundant or take early retirement. And all in all, although that all that money was coming further down the line, that was about a £30,000 hit to the cash flow, all in the space of 6 weeks, and very near to Christmas, in fact. So so for us, the cash was there. We had a solid business model, but our business model was, you know, people were willing to pay the price that we set, and particularly in relation to the special schools, they had a pot of money that it was reasonable for them to pay us. That was the pupil premium money, and we identified that early on as part of the commercial income strategy. Working with the community groups, again, they had pots of money that they would either could access, wanted to access, and were quite happy to share with us. But, you know, if you've not got the cash on hand, then, you know, it obviously just makes things incredibly difficult. And that 6 week period leading up to Christmas 2019, and then beyond that, because the other issue that you can find, and we find this all the time, is that once you know, you get behind, once the cash flow that you're either expecting or is imminent comes in, it goes in one hand and goes in one hand and goes out the other. So you really never get. You're always playing catch up, and that's where we were not struggling, but it just made everything feel like a grind, because, you know, we could never get in front of ourselves. There was never a buffer. My favourite phrase, and I stick by this, is the house will always set on fire, because it will. You know, the pandemic has been something that affected everyone, but I guarantee that if you're running any kind of organisation, be it a social enterprise or not, that you will have a fire. And the thing about it is that you can either scream and say everything's on fire, or you can try and make a plan. The key thing is that, and I've had this conversation recently, it's to look ahead and be realistic about what's coming in, when it's coming in, and what you're going to do. Because the reality is that even if you go down a social finance route, you've got all your ducks in a row. You've got to think about it like this. You probably start to finish process is probably going to take you about 6 to 10 weeks, maybe. maybe even longer than that. So if you need imminent funds to you know, if you needed the funds yesterday, that's too late. So finance of any description, especially social finance like this, you need to be planning ahead. So we started these conversations off quite early on, particularly when we got into January. We had a board meeting. We said, is this something we want to do? Does it make sense? Actually, we need to, you know, we need to get ahead of ourselves a little bit. But then you've got this lag, and this is why cash flow is king, because it is always a case of money takes longer to come, be it social finance, be it earned revenue, be it a grant. It always takes longer than you think from the process of getting a yes. And this is the important thing. It's always a longer process from getting a yes to actually to actually getting the cash. And that also brings you on to a very important point, that social finance, I have a tendency, I know a lot of people have a tendency, because it's finance, because it's repayable, that you say, okay, I'm going to take less, you know, and that defeats the object of having a finance package put in place, because a finance package needs to give you that bit of, it should be giving you that bit of leverage that you need to either you know, pursue the contract that's going to put you ahead, the client that's going to put you ahead, or develop the service that's going to put you ahead. So therefore, you always need that. You should always be saying, let's have a little bit more, because in the short term, that's going to cost you more in terms of repayment potentially, but in the longer term, it's actually going to give you what you need. And it is possible in finance, and we've done this recently due to the pandemic, it is possible to talk to your lender and you know, form a financial relationship. Now I'm getting on to the next slide. What I wanted to say there was, it is possible to do interest-only payments. It is possible to have repayment holidays on the capital part of the loan, because you will have the capital part of the loan, which is the main chunk of it, and you'll also have the interest part of the loan, which is significantly cheaper. So if you do need that extra buffer, if you do need that time, you can always go to interest only payments, and that's entirely possible. And we did that through the pandemic, and it worked you know, it worked great. And all that's really meant is that we've extended the loan term by 6 months, but realistically, you do have the ability to pay it off quicker. Still, can we just go to the next slide? So I think this is the critical thing for me about the social finance sector, is that if we go back in time, credit decisions weren't made on computer algorithms. They were made by relationships that you have with another person, and social finance and social financiers, because they're interested in social impact, because they're interested in social good, you will find, or at least we found, that relationships, you know, the relationship we have with the key fund is great. It's beneficial. It's talking to a human being that understands the pitfalls and the why fors, and doesn't necessarily judge you solely on an Excel spreadsheet, and understands that there's nuance. And I think it's really, really valuable that in this moment that we're in, because it is valuable to be able to pick up the phone and have a conversation, and also because you'll benefit from their expertise. You benefit so much. We've benefited so much more than just the money. Obviously, the money is great, it's fantastic, but it's opened other avenues to us. It connects us into different spheres. That's why I'm talking to you today, because we have that relationship. It's old school in social finance. It's like having a relationship with a bank manager who doesn't hate you or doesn't at least treat you like you're binary. And I think that's really important, because again, we worked again with Key Fund through the pandemic, and that's meant that we're able to deliver on work that's that's specifically about the pandemic recovery, which is something I'm deeply passionate about. But equally, you still need the money, and you still need the cash flow. It's all right having the money coming in, but if it's not there, it hampers your ability to either keep staff on, recruit new staff, or even pursue new opportunities. So I think there's three things to summarize. Take more than you think you need if you're going to go for it. The relationships that you form with your social finance partner are key. And what is the first? Sorry, I would say actually those are the two things. The third thing is actually pretty obvious, and that's have a very clear strategy in mind for your for what you're going to do with the money. And bolted onto that would be think ahead, look ahead, and think, when do I need the money? Because as I say, the process can take 6 to 10 weeks, and that's providing all goes smoothly, and nothing ever goes smoothly. So if the money, again, cash flow is king, but if the money arrives too late to be effective, then it's wasted. It needs to be the right amount in the right moment at the right, So those are the key points that I want to make. Just to go back slightly to the boring stuff, the Key Fund loan that we had, the Key Fund loan that we had was 15,000 in total. It might have been a little bit more than that, but let's call it 15k for sake of convenience. That was actually made up of a loan and a grant. So in many cases, what you'll probably find is that there'll be a mixture. If you do go down the social finance route, that there's a mixture of loan and grant income coming in. Although that 15k sounds like a big figure, I don't know the size of your organisations. It might not, but often packages are blended, and as I say, there are repayment options that can give you more leverage. But it's about, as I said before, you need to be able to repay it. So the cash flow needs to be, the cash needs to be there, and you need to have clear revenue streams for how you're going to repay it. And also, if you're relying it exclusively on grant-based funding, lenders are probably going to regard that with a little bit more suspicion. So, these are things that you should think about. But it's the amount, it's the moment, and it's about the relationship with your funder as well. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, I
Please
think
fire away.
it certainly summed up I think you've certainly highlighted the great relationship you've got with Key Fund, who I can certainly say are very good as well. And that's what we've been hearing from a lot of the social enterprises, that they've been very supportive throughout COVID and the ability to repay and stuff. Somebody must have some questions. Come on.
Make use of me while I'm here. I mean,
I've got a question.
Yeah, go
on. So it's really great what you do, by the way, in terms of, I'm a big fan of sport myself, and having the opportunity to work with people from the community and bring them together for it's a great thing you're doing. I wanted to ask about volunteering And what do you feel is some of the biggest barriers that maybe young people might have in terms of wanting to volunteer for programs that you do?
So I didn't quite cover this in detail in the presentation, but we do have volunteers, and crucially as well, the volunteers come from a range of backgrounds and a range of ages as well. And we're quite keen, because you see what will happen in some of our groups is we'll have potentially siblings coming. We'll have potentially a range of different ages. So volunteering and allowing and upskilling those people who are either more able or at least a little bit older, it's a great way to keep them engaged and also deliver extra value. In terms of recruiting volunteers externally, we've had problems with that, although we were just getting better at it pre-pandemic, obviously, as with everything. I think one of the big issues with young people and volunteering is that it's a bit like the unpaid internship. We do pay expenses. You should pay expenses to your volunteers. That's absolutely critical. Giving them a fair sort of remuneration for their time. But for many people, especially for the people that you want to target, so the people maybe not currently in education or training, those expenses might not cover it. And equally as well, actually, and we find this with participants as well. I think there's a reluctance. There's a genuine reluctance, or how would you say? Because we travel all over West Yorkshire, so we work between Huddersfield, Dewsbury, and Leeds, and between, cover many miles in between. So it is the case that although we want as many volunteers as possible, getting them to be able to travel with us is very difficult. But having said that, what we are doing is we are, as part of our response to COVID, we've renewed our focus on volunteers and training, and that's going to be a big part of what we do going forward, because I just think that people need it. So
I think we might be about to, well, the agenda. Oh, hang on. Last question before break. She just put it up there. Go on, Heidi.
I'm really interested, Lewis, about the mixed audience that you have in terms of your service users.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we're criticised for all the time, that people say we need to focus on young people or we need to focus on adults. And like yourselves, we go across quite a broad spectrum of service users. And I'm just wondering how you address that in terms of your organisation, and do you get a lot of hassle and flack because of it?
Well, people might criticise me, but that doesn't necessarily mean I listen to what they say. At the end of the day, the commonality with our user groups is that they are at the more impaired end of the spectrum. So that's the thing that runs through. These are people, whether they're young or old, who would miss out on the benefits of physical activity otherwise. And that's the common thread. And the age and the relative impairment and additional needs of these people is neither here nor there, because that is that's the group. So I think as long as you've got that sort of red thread running through everything you're doing, then it becomes clear. But also, the social aims of your organisation should allow you to have flexibility to address arising needs, and we're at a stage now where there are more and more new needs being created, So I just ignore that, frankly. As long as you can, my overriding thing is, as long as you deliver, as long as you do what you say you do, then that's absolutely fine. You know, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's just people saying, "Oh, you can't do that. It's not really, you can't possibly be good at everything." Yes, you can. It's fine. It's not difficult. Do what you say you're gonna do, and nobody can ever should never criticize you for it.
I hope everyone is feeling okay and refreshed. I hope everyone's feeling good. Ali, I don't know if you want to do anything in particular or just to check how everyone's feeling before we introduce Hermina.
Right. I want some energy. I want some. I'm not going to make you all stand up and do a dance like some people do, but I want some energy from the Zoom. So give me a cheer or wave your hands if you're feeling positive. Woo!
Woo! Gas hands.
I was going to say, I try and do a Mexican wave, but everybody's doing different things around the thing, isn't it? So it won't quite work. So that's it. That's all I'm doing. Back to you, Emily. Follow that one.
Much more fun than me, Ali. It's it's fair to say. It is always just good to get a bit of energy, isn't it? I mean, cup of teas kind of always go so far, or galaxy bars, or whatever it is we've chosen on our break just then. So we'll get back to the agenda, and I'm really pleased to introduce Hermina, who is joining us from Sustainable and Social Capital. She is a portfolio director there, and she's kindly agreed to come and chat to us about some of the work that she does as a social investor. And we've asked her to take us through some of the case studies, some of the investees that she's worked with that's had a really kind of profound impact on her, and to talk about those from her lens as a social investor. And she's also going to demo, I think, their swanky new website, which is all very exciting. So I'm going to hand over to Hermina. And as always, please feel free to pop questions into the chat, and she'll take questions as well at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, and good to meet everyone. It was great to hear from Louise in the breakout room. Yeah, I was instructed not to bring any slides, and I think everybody's attention on long Zoom calls, I think slides can be a bit heavy. So instead, I said that I thought that the best way to introduce SASC is to actually direct people to our new website. So I'm going to try to share the screen. Right. So, Social and Sustainable Capital, we're a social investor, and just to place it in the context of Ishita's earlier presentation, we are one of the financial intermediaries that Big Society Capital works with to deploy those funds and invest in charities and social enterprises. Our mandate is to invest in the UK, so we're UK-wide. And in particular, we're focusing on addressing issues of poverty, deprivation, and social exclusion. We are a social enterprise ourselves. We're not a charity, but 51% of our profits do get donated to the SIP Foundation. I think the best way to get an idea of what we invest in is to look at our portfolio page. So these are all of our investments. Oh, sorry. Current and past investments, and you can see the spread of our investments across the UK, and you can also look at the impact areas that we're funding. So anything from helping asylum seekers, dealing with learning disabilities as well, working with charities that are alleviating domestic violence, working with ex-offenders, and we've got quite a lot of renewable energy assets as well. In terms of renewable energy, we're also looking at to invest in organizations that also support their local communities through community benefit funds. We've also assigned SDGs to all of our borrowers. So you can actually see what SDGs, if you can sort our portfolio by SDGs as well. I think another.
Sorry, but I don't know what an SDG is.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I think there's the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you.
That are, yeah, so there's I can send another. I can follow up with a link to that as well. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And that's another way in which we are measuring impact. That's another conversation in itself. I think in terms of the value and maturity of our loans, we make loans of anywhere between £300,000 and £5 million. And in terms of maturity, anywhere between 2 years and 30 years. They can be loans. Usually the larger loans are secured with assets. So they're secured against either renewable energy assets or property. And the smaller loans are shorter term, usually to fund working capital needs, setting up a new contract. For example, Brook Young People is a sexual health charity, and they work with local commissioners to set up new services. They've just set up a service in Cornwall, and we've made a loan of £300,000 to help with the setup costs. However, the case study that I wanted to showcase here is from Hull, and considering the I think it's local to many of the participants here. It's Hull Women's Network. It's also a beneficiary of a Social Enterprise Yorkshire and Humber award a couple of years ago. And the reason I wanted to bring them up is because we've had a long-term relationship with them. They have been themselves on a journey in terms of taking social investment and growing the loans that they were taking. They started around 2008 to 2010, driven by those the same challenges that Ishita discussed earlier on. The the increased competition for grants and contracts. So they started taking social investment and increased the amount of loans that they were taking to fund the organization's growth. So Hull Women's Network works with victims of domestic violence. They started out providing counseling services, helping women to leave abusive relationships. And soon enough, they realized that the best way to support their beneficiaries was to ensure that they have a safe home to go to once they've exited the relationship. So that's where we helped them out to build a property portfolio. They started renting properties from private landlords, and started to buy some properties in Hull using a future builder's loan and right to buy receipts. The challenge for a small charity to buy properties is the ability to raise enough equity for a deposit in order to get mortgages. So when they met us, we started to discuss the possibility of giving them loans to cover 100% of the cost of the properties, and that was how the first loan that we made to Hull Women's Network was developed. So our first loan to them was in 2016. It was a £2 million loan that allowed them to buy 33 properties in Hull. And it was a product that was co-designed entirely with Hull Women's Network. They explained to us the challenges that they had in providing appropriate properties for their beneficiaries, and we designed a product that would actually address those challenges. One of them being access to equity. So we agreed to give them 100% funding for the properties. And our loan, in addition to funding the entire cost of the properties, also contributes to some of the transaction costs at the outset and the refurbishment to costs that allow Hull Women's Network to make the property appropriate and welcoming for a new beneficiary. And the other reason why this relationship has been particularly impactful for SAS, for ourselves, is that it actually was the blueprint for us to develop a new fund, which is social and sustainable housing. So we created, from this specific loan, we actually expanded it to create an entire fund following this model. And at the moment, we've raised £40 million in that fund, and we've deployed it to 6 other organizations. And we've made another follow-up loan to Hull Women's Network from our social and sustainable housing fund of an additional £3 million. So at the moment, today, Hull Women's Network bought about 60 properties with funds from SASC, and they're continuing to grow their organization and their services. So that was pretty much it from me. Happy to take questions if any at this point, or talk about any of our other investments.
Thank you so much, Amina, for that. It was really interesting and really great to hear more about Hull Women's Network. I'm just wondering if anyone's got any questions that they would like to ask Amanda.
Yeah, I just found that interesting, really did, Amina. I just wondered, you said that you as an organisation have raised, I think it was 40 million yourselves, and I just wondered, you know, you're a social investor. Where do you go for your investment, for your money? Where do you go?
Yeah,
do you get it?
Yeah, so I skipped that part, but I didn't know if it would be interesting to this audience. But actually, we started out with Big Society Capital money. So we started out in 2012, very shortly after Big Society Capital was established. So our first investors were Big Society Capital and the social investment business.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
The housing fund actually expanded to 19 investors, including commercial investors. So
yes, it's a really big growth area, housing, social housing, and refurbishment of existing properties for social use, and it's a massive growth area. I have got another question, but I don't want to dominate it, so I'll leave it for now.
I think you're fine to ask, Amanda, please do.
Okay, so you've got the Big Society Capital and Social Investment Bank, you know, funding you. Is it possible for ordinary social enterprises and charities to go direct to those, or what's the value that you add by being an investor in the middle there?
Right. So as Ishita said at the outset, Big Society Capital doesn't actually invest directly in charities. So they invest via intermediaries.
Okay.
Social investment business has various investment products. In some cases, they have deployed funds directly. And for our other investors, they pool their funds. So in terms of, you know, the pool of 19 investors that want to deploy their funds, they also use us as an intermediary. The value that we bring to charities is really the attention that we can give to helping them through the investment process. So we don't just deploy the money and then lock the door and wait for the cash flows to come back in. So I think, as Louise mentioned in the breakout room that you're on it as well, Amanda, the obtaining social investment is a pretty process intensive, it's an intense process. So really it involves a due diligence phase where perhaps charities need to sharpen their financial skills. Their business plans need to be they need to create a business plan that shows a repayment profile for the loans that are being taken. Yeah. We help our due diligence is also a support phase. So we actually help organizations to get to the point of where the loan is deployed. And then during the life of the loan, we provide quite a lot of support to organizations alongside just monitoring and collecting payments.
I think that's very important to the average charity or social enterprise that might be quite financially aware, but actually taking on a loan is a whole new step, and it's great to hear that all that support is there for them. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's great. And I guess just to kind of add to that as well, just as like what Ishita was saying earlier, there's a whole host of resources as well that's available online to look at, as well as making those connections with fund managers who you potentially want to build relationships with as well. So thank you for those two questions, Amanda. That's really really great, and really great to hear from Hermina of the broad range of support that's on offer from SASC as well. Do we have any other questions for Hermina?
I'm just going to expand because I've just posted a blog post in there on the topic of, being in the middle there, what do you add? And a question that we get asked quite a lot is how social is social investment? And I think the thing that's really worth remembering is that when you are building a relationship with a social investor, it's a really long-term relationship, that those repayment plans, they go over the period of years and years. And over the course, what you are getting really is that relationship. And I think a real testament to that has been through the coronavirus crisis, and has been seeing how social investors have responded, because we've had so many stories of my social investor did this, they adapted this, they did X, Y, Z, and it is really about the relationship and also the expertise. So whether that's a sector expertise, a business model expertise, a regional or locational expertise, that's essentially what you're getting from working directly with a social investor. So I've put a blog post in there that we actually did, I think, after Good Finance had run, I think, 50-ish Let's Talk Good Finance events, and we collected our learnings and the lessons that our Hear from a Peer speakers had told us. And one of the key ones is that it's more than just about the money. It really is about that relationship.
Fantastic, thank you, Ishita. Do we have any other questions before we move on to the next and final part of our agenda today? Anything else anybody would like to discuss? No? Okay.
I just wanted to say I added a link to the Sustainable Development Goals in the chat for anyone interested in reading more about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Okay, fantastic. So thank you so much again, Hermina, for your time and for coming along and for joining us today. That was really insightful, and thank you for joining us. I know that you've got to dash off as well. I know you've another day of back-to-back Zoom calls. So yeah, your time is really, really appreciated. we have just one final part of the agenda left, and that is another Mentimeter poll. Just as we wrap up, we are actually surprisingly running on time, which is always it's always good. So I just wanted to run the kind of final Mentimeter poll of the day to kind of rate your knowledge of social investment after hearing from Ishita, hearing from our two fantastic Hear from a Peer speakers, and then from hearing from Hamina as well. And then just to say, after this final poll, we are going to stick around and do some optional networking. So it'd be great if anyone wants to stick around and have a bit more of a discussion, a bit more of a chat, and that would be fantastic as well. But obviously no pressure at all if you'd rather get back to other things. I know everyone is extremely busy at the moment. So let me just share my screen once again. Get the poll up. Right. So it's just the same Menti that we were doing before, and the same code. I will just share my screen just there. If you could just pop in your rating. So let's see if we have improved from our 5.6, was it before? That would be great. So just pop on to menti.com if you haven't already, and the code is 6841716. That would be brilliant. Just going to wait for a couple more people to fill in. Almost there.
He's here for you, Emily.
Oh, very cute. Very, very cute. It's always a good part of the day when I can see other people's pets. I'm missing my dog very much, so very cute. Okay, I think we're up to 6.9, so we have made a gentle improvement from where we were, but like we've all discussed before, there's so much to learn, and this is hopefully just going to be the start of kind of more long-term discussion. Let's Talk Good Finance is just one of our many tools that we offer at Good Finance. There's a huge range of resources that are available, and you can find out a lot more about those on our website as well. And most importantly, myself and the team, we are always here for discussion, and we hope that between ourselves and through Ali, of course, this will just be the start of a longer conversation as well. So we are climbing up to 7.2, which is always good. If we can get to 7.6, that will make me happy just for my love of symmetry. But we're going back down. Always good to see. I'll just leave that Menti poll up and people can just fill that in as they would like. But I'm just going to hand back to Ali and stop talking and just get her to say thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, so it's been different. It is very different when you're doing it this way and you can't see everyone, and normally you'd see somebody you want to talk and you go up and tap them on the shoulder and say hello, but you can do it in the chat if you want to. So basically get in touch with any of us for any information that you want following up, anything you want to know about social enterprise Yorkshire and Humber, anything you want to know about social investment. If we can't answer it, we will point you to the people who can. And we are hoping to run another one early next year. So so thank you very much, and let's all just keep talking. And is anybody staying around, or have you all had enough of computers? We'll hang on for 5-10 minutes, and if nobody's around, if everybody's left, we'll disappear. So thank you all. Good to see you all.